So to spice up the whole policy review, since policies are kind of dry as a topic, and everybody asks, why do I need to worry about policies if you're trying to introduce me to cyber and hacking, and really, what does this have to do with effective cybersecurity? We have recently reviewed the 3 types of policies, and here's one of them. Here was the last ugly slide, and we said ACL lists were more prominently used in which particular environment, which particular technology environment do you find a much greater frequency of reference to ACLs? Does anyone remember from our last class? We said you'll find ACLs more commonly in this environment in particular.
Was it like a public environment?
Well, yes, that would be a good hint. This is a public multi-user environment. We said networking. In a network environment, you will see more references to ACLs as a general practice than you would inside a specific computer. In fact, if you're looking inside a specific computer, the concept of an access control list actually manifests as file permissions. So the idea of controlling the access of a resource or object using ACLs, we don't call it an ACL in the file system. In the file system, we say, hey, what are your permissions, right? When we say, what kind of login do you have? That has to do with privilege. Oh, you're a root. If you're root, you're God on that system, right? You have excessive amounts of privilege on that system. So when we talk about privilege, we're talking about the rank or level of your account for access. When we talk about permissions, we're talking about what kind of access control settings are implemented. And generically, your author is using industry standard concepts as defined by a lot of authorities like the National Centers for Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity and so on. They would use generic terms or general terms, but I want you to understand in the industry, especially among network manufacturers, ACLs are often referred to as a method of enhancing the filtering capacities of a router. A router. ACLs, that's a term that also means something else in a different context when you're dealing with routers. Now, we said there were 3 different kinds of policies. And before we get into the 3 different scenarios, oops, what update? Second scenario, first account exposure. Third scenario, I wanted to replace this with an F, but I thought, no, this is an academic setting and it's not like a sassy comedy YouTube routine. So in the interest of propriety and dignity, I'm going to leave it an H instead of an F. What the heck? How am I responsible for availability? Because there are 3 main ideas associated with good cybersecurity: CIA. If you don't know CIA in your sleep, and I'm not talking about the Central Intelligence Agency, I'm talking about something else. The A in availability, right? A is for availability. Before we get into the selected scenarios, what are the 3 types of policies? This is review, yeah, it's review. I want you to take up a chat option on screen, and I want you to list as quickly as you can each of the 3 types of policies we reviewed in our previous sessions this week. And yeah, I know it's not very exciting or sexy, but just bear with me and let's get through this as quickly as possible. So I'm going to display the chat window on my screen. It is being recorded. And I need some of you to say, okay, there's that one type of policy. Oh, it was just up there just a few seconds ago. Only he's not showing it now. So what was that called again? What type of policy was it? You're killing me here. Crickets? Really? Yeah, what's the type? You're supposed to be typing in the chat window. And I'm recording live. My chat window is going to show on screen while I'm doing this. Or maybe it isn't. So let's make it appear on screen. I'm going to do this so that it appears on screen. You remember the letters? Give me the letters. EISP. Does anyone recall what that is? Correct. Thank you. What does EI stand for? It does not stand for element, but it stands for a word that means the whole enchilada. Everyone.
Is it enterprise
It is,
information security?
it is enterprise. It is enterprise. Enterprise. And then the IS always means InfoSec, right? InfoSec, AKA cyber, right? Enterprise, cyber, or InfoSec policy. So it's IS policy. That's everybody. If you have an enterprise information security policy, it means, okay, it's the whole enchilada. Who does it involve? Your president? Yes. Your board? Yes. Your vice presidents? Yes. The newest hire? Who's the lowest ranking person? Whose part-time is needed and only a temporary hire? Yes. How about your business partners? Yes. How about your contractors? Yes. How about your guests? People who don't even belong to your organization, but they're using your Wi-Fi. They walked in your corridor, they're parked in your parking lot, and they're picking up USB thumb drives that one of your clueless employees left on the ground. Who does that count? Everyone. Yes, everyone. Enterprise. The whole enchilada. That's what it means. Enterprise. What's the other one? We got two more. Come on. ISSP. ISSP, issue specific. Thank you very much. Issue specific InfoSec policy. One last one. Come on. SYS SSP, system specific SSP is correct. That is correct. System specific SSP, InfoSec policy. All right, there we go. So EISP, ISSP, SYSSP, enterprise-wide, whole enchilada, issue specific, system specific. Now, let's talk about this. Oops, what update? Here's what I'm referring to. Oops, what update? Earlier this week, there was a critical, as in super sensitive, time sensitive, crisis evading, oh my gosh, 0-day exploit, patch your system in a hurry, cumulative update that posted in the lower system tray of everyone who owns a Windows 10 or Windows Server system. That happened this week. This week. And I want you to notice, here it is. When I check around with people everywhere, they don't know what I'm talking about. I do the check for updates on my system because I know what I'm talking about. But the issue is cumulative updates are like major releases each month that keep people out of jail. And that just was released. on the 13th, which happens to be my lucky number. And it was my birthday. So I was happy. It was a birthday present. It was like, oh, cool. I'm going to keep my stuff safe. Oh, it's not going to blow up while I'm in the middle of class. I love this. See, that's what I did. Now, how do we know whether or not you are patched? I'm going to go here, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a discussion about this. See, you did already something called optimizing your personal technology. Do you remember this? And if you recall, when you did optimizing your personal technology, there was a certain number for the OS build. It was explicitly mentioned in the video for optimizing your personal technology. What do you notice about this build? Oh, it's different. Why is it different? This is the OS build you should have on your screen right now. And if you don't, you're a naughty person. Now, I say that tongue in cheek, but the point is that we have a decision to make. We're going to be using policies, and we're going to make sure that people who are working with Windows systems understand that when the little blinky shows up here in the lower right corner and it goes, hey, you have an update. Hey, there's a little thing. And then down here on the start button, when you do this, it's a little red dot and it goes, hey, you have to update. And would you like to post the updates and restart? Or would you like to post the updates and shut down? And if you've been ignoring these things all week, it means you are in need of what kind of policy? If we were at an organization like we are right now, we're at the University of the Virgin Islands, where we what? Learn about best practices, where we learn a better way of living, a better way of being safe, a better way of doing cyber. If you are looking at, now, those of you that have a Mac, you're just smiling, you're like, this doesn't affect me. Yeah, it does. You have version numbers too. We'll get to the Macs in just a second. What I want to do is I want each of you to pull up your screen right now, just like I have right now. And I could, as a matter of interest, just to spice up the whole policy thing, I could say, okay, I'm going to stop sharing. And now each of you share your screen. And some of you are going to go, oh, look at the time. I have an appointment with my doctor. I'm supposed to get a shot. Oh, look at the, oh, you know what? My laptop is at home. I'm joining with my smartphone. Some of you are going to do that. But what I really want you to do is I want you to play this recording back tonight, and I want you to check your own, because I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm not going to throw you under the bus. I'm not going to ask you to share your screen. Why? Because it's Friday. Why else? Because there's a tropical storm coming. But I'm trying to make a point here. Every month, if you don't do this, you're a sitting duck. You'll become the poster child for, oh, I had an intro to cyber course, but I didn't learn a darn thing. Which gets everybody else in the room going, what the heck? What update? Given the scenario I've just played out, which type of policy should I implement to ensure that going forward, as users, you will always do this? You will never be caught in the lurch with unfinished business. Is it a system-specific policy, an issue-specific policy, or an enterprise-wide specific policy? Okay, I have one vote that says system-specific policy. The context here is explicitly Windows 10, and it's explicitly this OS build. All in favor that this should be a system-specific policy, say aye.
Aye.
We have,
Aye.
all right, that's 3 ayes. Because Lanaya is the one that already said it. She's sitting here in the classroom. She said, hey, that's a system-specific policy. Now, if we said every time your platform, your device, regardless of which platform, regardless of which device, regardless of which system, every time there are critical updates, time-sensitive updates, security updates, thou shalt immediately apply the security updates. Is that a system-specific policy, an issue-specific policy, or an enterprise-wide specific policy? What do you think? If we change the scenario slightly and said, okay, we're not just talking, that means you Mac users, that means you Android users, that means you iOS users. Who are we talking about?
Enterprise, everybody.
It could be. If you wanted to issue an edict where you said the whole enchilada, everybody does this regardless. However, it's kind of hard to enforce because you have guests, you have business partners who are like, you're not the boss of me, you're not the boss of me. Well, for certain things, you could be the boss of them. You could say, if you want to do business with us and you want to be a partner with us and you want to provide services that we pay you for, you got to do it safely. So no, I'm not giving you my credit card unless I know the credit card machine is safe. Because that happens. And it has happened, okay? It could be an enterprise policy if you wanted everyone to automatically update and you wanted everyone to understand this is how we do. This is how we do it. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, I'm sorry. That was a really bad example of an old tune that was very popular a few years ago. Can't remember the artist's name, but I'm sure one of you might. Well, anyway, all right. This is how we do it, right? If you say enterprise-wide, you can use enterprise-wide. You could say issue-specific. It has to do with what? Security updates. The issue is time-sensitive security patching, security fixing updates. That's the issue. And you could put it out as an issue and say, this has to do with what? Time-sensitive, close the hole, fix the gap, keep the bad guys out. That's an issue. Okay, so you could go enterprise-wide, and I appreciate everybody's thought on that. All right, next one, first account exposure. First account exposure. What is first account? Any questions about our first situation? Oops, what update? Any questions, thoughts? It isn't, I'm sorry. It is a system, yes. So Lanaya asked, confirm, it is a system-specific policy. And the short answer is yes. Now, if we tweak the scenario and said, ooh, I'm pulling up every platform screen where it's, oh, my Fire Stick has an update. Ooh, my Wi-Fi router has an update. Ooh, my Android phone has an update. Ooh, my iPad has an update. And I'm not doing any updates. Well, that would be like an issue-specific update or an enterprise-specific update. If your leadership has any sense at all, they would probably say, you know what? I want everybody to be safe and everybody needs to load updates. I don't care who they are. And if they're walking on our property, if they're guests, if they're customers, if they're in our stuff, if they're on our systems, if they're using our network, and that's part of what we do with our customers, then they also have to be safe. But think about hotels. Think about restaurants. Think about airports. There are scenarios where, okay, the people that run the airport, okay, the people that run the restaurant, okay, the people or the coffee house or the rest, you know, or the hotel, they're the ones that can actually do the stuff, but it's really hard to get your customers. I mean, you know, if somebody's sitting down at a coffee shop, you're like, hey, if you updated your iPhone, because we don't want you to pollute all the other customers. It's kind of difficult to get your customers, even though they're in the mix and they're on your system and they're using your free Wi-Fi, because what? That's part of your service. You get my point. There are scenarios where you have to be issue specifics and you cannot be enterprise specific. But if you control the turf 100%, you should go 100% enterprise, ideally. Yeah. Now we beat that to death. First account exposure. First account exposure. Did you know? And perhaps you didn't. Everybody says, ooh, Linux is more secure. It's locked down from, that's a lie. Linux is only locked down automatically or by default with regard to access control lists, AKA file permissions. But when you set up a first account in Linux, it says, oh, who's going to use this computer? And when you put in a name, that first account has root access. What happens when you set up a brand new Mac? You go to the Apple store or you go to Best Buy and you get a shiny new Mac and you're so excited because you put down some change. It took some cheddar to buy that Mac. And you pull up your screen and you're like, I'm better than you are. You're looking at everybody else around you in the room. Everybody with me? Any Mac owners out there? Yeah, the first time you unwrap that Mac and you look at everybody else and you smile because you're like, yeah. See this? I'm driving the BMW of computer systems, or the Mercedes Benz or the Porsche, right? And what are you driving? Okay, a minivan. Yeah. All right. So first account exposure, the Mac user, what does it ask them when they set up? Oh, who's using this Mac? Did you know that the first account that's set up on a Mac is what? Root access, administrator access. Windows, same thing. Windows. When you set up a Windows machine for the first time, how about an Android phone? Same thing. First account. Who's using this Android phone? What about iPads? Same thing. Same thing. Same thing. It is a universal problem. Now, I didn't use the name administrator. I used the name owner. I did that intentionally because I wanted to use an example of something that I call a provocative nuisance. If I name my first account owner because I don't want to use the word root or God or administrator, or I don't want to use my own name because, hello, when people are hacking your laptop, they're going to see Tim's laptop. And then who's logged in? Tim. See, I wonder who the first user was. Hackers don't have to think very hard to figure out who the root person is, right? So if it's Lucy's Mac and Lucy is the account that's logged in, the odds are pretty good the Lucy account is what kind of account? Administrative. It's a root account. And here they are connected to the public network. Shame, shame, shame on her, on him, on you, all of you. All of us do this, all of us. None of us have ever been told properly by Apple, properly by Microsoft, properly by IBM, by Google, right? All of us. None of us have been coached. Look, who's going to manage this device? Who is responsible for maintaining the security of this device? You know what every wizard, when you start up for the very first time, that shiny new toy should ask you? Who's going to go to jail if you lose the data on this device? Please set up the name of an account of someone who will maintain this. It should be a maintenance account. It should be called spare. It should be called, probably shouldn't be called Jesus, because people will go, okay, I'm looking for God or root or administrator, and then they see, Jesus. And they think, okay, that has to be an administrator account. Don't name the account something that's provocative. But the most important thing is don't stop there. After you set up the first account, what should you do? Set up a second account? A second account that you use when you're connected. A second account you use when you're connected. Let me say that again. No one ever, under any circumstances, regardless of who they are, should accept and set up and start using that first account on a network. You want to stay safe? Set up the first account, then set up a second account and give it a name that will cue you into the idea that, hey, I should use this when I'm what? When I'm connected. Now, I know that for the sake of argument here, I did something really obnoxiously stupid, but on this laptop, I started with an owner's account, which is not the best name. I should have used something that had nothing to do with Tim. Nothing to do with admin or root or God or privilege, right? And then after I had that first account, I should set up something that I know is something I use when connected. And it's a standard account. It's not an administrative account. When I change the account type here, it allows me to change it to administrator because right now it's a standard user. Okay? It's a standard user. When I connect to the internet, I'm connecting with something that's a standard user. And I guarantee you, I guarantee each of you, if you do this and you start clean with a fresh slate, with a bare metal install on any device of your choosing, and I will help you do this and save your data. If you set it up right, you take the first account, you don't connect, you set up a second account. It's a standard user. I guarantee you the best items on the menu at your favorite restaurant, my treat, that you will be working on the web for a day or so at most. And when you're out there on the web and you're doing email and you're working with those cutesy little social network apps and social media apps, you're going to be flipping along with all the stuff on the screen, happy as a clam, using your standard account. And all of a sudden you'll see a prompt. And you know what that prompt will ask? It'll ask, hey, can you give me your administrative login? I need your administrator's password. And you're going to go, whoa, scratch the record, scratch the record. I'm just reading an email here. Why would this email ask me for my administrative login? Not the user I'm signed on with now, the other user, the privileged user, the first account I set up on this system. Why would this device be prompting me to put in my administrative credentials to change this system if I'm just reading an email, if I'm just looking at a web page, if I'm just responding to a social media post? Do you get what I'm saying? Now, if you happen to browse in the dark web or you get to the naughty bits of the internet, then basically you're going to see that prompt a whole lot faster. Just saying. Everybody, now, who sets up an account called when connected? Obviously, that's ridiculous. I wanted to show people how to use the encryption file system to protect the data on your stuff. And I'm using a Windows 10 Professional Edition, which includes the encryption file system options where you can just encrypt the stuff on the fly. It's like, oh, here's a directory. Oh, here's some files. I want to encrypt them. Those are associated with your login. So I wanted to show people how that works. That's why I have a separate account for that. But this one is the one I'm supposed to be using when I'm on the internet, when connected, right? You should set up something that doesn't have anything to do with your personal identity. So when you're online and somebody knows, ooh, I know this is Tom, it doesn't say, oh, Tom for the account. And Tom is definitely not the first account. Now, this is the single most glaring exposure and problem on the planet in terms of cybersecurity. And yet, no titans of industry, and I'm just preaching a little sermon right now, Microsoft, Apple, Oracle, Amazon, Google, all y'all, none of them tell you you're supposed to work differently. None of them explain this. And you know why? I'll tell you why in a nutshell. If you just go on your happy way and set up your first account and start using it, what do you think happens within 18 months to 2 years to the condition of your laptop as it gets slowly infected over and over again while you're browsing the web? What do you think most users do when everything starts to slow down and get stupid? Do they take the time to dig out and reload their system, or what do you think most people do? I'm just asking a question. They get a new one. They get a new one. They bring it into a shop. They bring it into Best Buy, and the first question they ask at the Geek Squad is, okay, we can do that, but I'm just curious, how old is this thing? Oh, it's 3 years old. Well, you know, most laptops are really only designed to last 3 or 4 years, right? What are we saying? It keeps them in business. It's a money thing. People spend a lot of money on tech. People spend more money on their smartphones than they do on their laptops. I'm going to say that again. It's big money. And that's why they don't do it. And it's wrong. This is a huge problem. You will not have any significant impact as a cybersecurity professional anywhere if you don't advocate for the thing I'm doing right now. So we have a first account exposure challenge that's been around as long as we've had computers. For 25, 30 years, people have been logging into a computer. They set up that first account. Well, it's kind of how you set up a new machine. But hey, they want to stay in business, so it's their dirty little secret. They don't tell anybody, and they just say, hey, you know, sucks to be you. You should buy a new one. True story. I set up a first account properly. At my last post, I was there for 13 years at another minority serving institution in South Carolina. I kept the same laptop, smooth, fast, hot, secure, stable, impenetrable, for 7 years. Never had a problem for 7 years. Every time I had a meeting, I'd tell people, take your shot, take your best shot. Try to take down my laptop. I dare you. And people would try everything. For 7 years, I didn't have to blink. For 7 years. And then I did something stupid. I demonstrated something else in another meeting, and it was my own doing, but I blew it up intentionally after 7 years. Well, it was at that point, I really did want a new laptop. So in any case, first account exposure. What kind of, let's pull this back in. Let's reel it back in. What kind of policy am I working first account exposure? Of the three. System, okay. So am I going to write a different policy for each system where a first account is set up? That is a choice, that is an option, but that would mean I'd have to have a separate policy for each different system that you set up the first time when it's brand new, right?
So then it would either be, can it both be enterprise and information?
In the same manner as the oops, what update, it could be, yes. It could be enterprise. Okay. If your business scenario allows for it, it could be enterprise. If your business scenario does not allow for it, it would be issue specific. Yes, excellent. How about this one? What the heck? How am I responsible for availability? There's this thing that's happening right now. I'm just saying. Everybody see my screen?
Yes.
What the heck? How am I responsible for availability? True or false? In a bad hurricane, your junk can fly right out of the room while you watch.
True.
True. I mean, nobody wants to think about it. True or false? Even in a tropical storm, not a hurricane, if your roof gives out, you can get a lot of water that douses electronic things. Water and electronics don't mix. When was the last time each of you got a backup copy of your data, the pictures, the videos, the emails, the documents, the stuff you want to keep on a separate thumb drive? Who do you think's going to do it for you? How am I responsible for availability? I'm talking to every man, woman, and child on planet Earth. How am I? Well, it's your device. You own it, right? In this scenario, I'm not talking about the job. I'm talking about something you own as an individual. Now, let's face it, there are men, women, and children worldwide that own devices that have data on them. So how am I responsible for availability? Let's pretend we're in an organization now and you use that device to function in your environment, in your work, in your workplace. Considering how comprehensive a scenario we're talking about here, are we talking about issue specific, enterprise, or system? Well, I'll give you a hint. I said every man, woman, and child on planet Earth. And I said one of the policies you could consider to be the whole enchilada, right?
I was gonna
Enterprise.
say enterprise, but then I remember all you said.
Thank you. Thank you. Your first instinct was spot on, enterprise, right? There are some scenarios where you want everybody to understand, oh, that means me, right? Who is going to be to blame if something on your, take your pick, personal device goes bye-bye because we had a storm and it was coming and we all knew it was coming. It wasn't like, oh, we got an earthquake. Oh, there's a tidal wave. We've actually got some time here, right? There is some time. When was the last time nobody thinks it can happen until it happens? And that's what hit us with Maria and Irma. Nobody thinks it can happen until what? It happens. And sooner or later, it happens. All right. I'm going to do something I don't usually do. I'm going to go to slideshows. Thank you for participating in the applying policy effectively selected scenarios. Now, I don't know if you feel any differently about whether or not policies are effective or sexy or anything. The point is, if you have a policy that people have to read and understand and agree to, that's half the battle, and you got to know how to use them effectively, which scenarios, which types. Thank you for playing that game with me. Now, what I'd like to do here is go a little further, developing and implementing effective security policy. Now, this is a busy slide, but I'm going to make things easy before we go into the weekend. My goal is to finish and wrap up in like 2 minutes flat, because I don't want to run over. We got enough on our plate. We have a tropical storm coming. But we've been talking about when you develop policies, when there's dissemination, when people read it, when they comprehend it, when there's compliance, when there's enforcement, all of those components we've talked about in one form or fashion. This is a very important slide. This one slide, you should commit to memory. But in order for that to happen, you have to have good policy management. We've already talked about that. And you have to eat. Now, the acronym in your textbook is SETA, but when you have your items on the assessment, I'm not going to refer to CETA. I'm going to refer to EAT, as in education, awareness, and training. The key to this is education, awareness, and training. There is a delightful link I'm going to send you as soon as we sign off. It was crafted in Great Britain. It's hilarious. And it doesn't have to do with anything other than a telephone, which was a former, thing that we used anyway, you get the point. Before we had all this high-end tech stuff, we had phones. And we had the same problem. And it was the same solution that never happened. Education, awareness, and training. I want you to think, okay, how would this be different with portable tech devices? Not just a phone, right? EAT. You have to have people who are educated and then they're aware constantly as updates, as changes. Why? Well, here's something. Just this week, oh, this is hilarious. A BlackBerry device. Oh, okay. All right, I'm just going to show you this one. I was in the St. Croix airport this week. They have some stuff set up on their Wi-Fi that gives me a whole lot of information. All I got to do is connect, issue one command, and I'm off to the races. Put another way, there might be some things that public Wi-Fi services don't want to include. All right. Let's go back to this again. Any questions about that? All right, I'm going to talk even faster and then I'm going to quit in 60 seconds or less. There are better ways to educate, to train, and to raise awareness, right? The idea of massive open online courses, or MOOCs, free university courses, is what they're talking about, right? Awareness, you have to have things like, hey, it's cybersecurity month. Hey, when was the last time? Hey, there's a big update, and in your inbox it says, please take the time to do this. You'll see all sorts of really engaging information about EAT and how best, right? What security is and what employees should do in some situations is known as what? Education or training or awareness or alertness. Well, let's see. There's some key words here. To teach members. Well, teaching members wouldn't involve awareness, I wouldn't think. Oh, but it is. Oh, it can be tricky. It can be tricky. Training is how an organization prepares members on how they should react and respond. Education seeks to provide theoretical foundations to members of the organization as to why we do this. Alertness is not an element covered in this module, right? EAT, it's not alertness, it's awareness, right? Once you're educated, once you've been trained, then you'll know what to do in some situations. Now you're aware. The subtle things, the subtle distinctions matter. And this is one of them. I don't want you to get skunked on the assessment, okay? Now we're at a good place where we can close, right? Don't read too much in the question, know the material. All right.